Welcome everyone to Module 6 of the Conservation Ambassador Training Series. Bienvenue, Gisukukit, why wait? So I know many of you have been able to join the last couple sessions, but there are a few new faces today. So my name is Camille Roberge, and I'm the KCP Stewardship Coordinator. And today I'm going to be hosting the session along with Juliet and Kendall, my wonderful colleagues. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the rich heritage of stewardship in the Kootenay region and acknowledging that KCP's work occurs in the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Chinaaga, Secwepemc, Sinixt, and Syilx peoples who have lived here and stewarded the land and water since time immemorial. And we would also like to thank our funders, without whom we couldn't offer these types of programs. So for those who are new to the Kootenay Conservation Program, which is known as KCP, we're a partnership of 85 land and water conservation and stewardship groups, First Nations, government agencies, resource industries, and agricultural producers working throughout the East and West Kootenays. And our mandate is to coordinate and facilitate conservation efforts on private land and to generate the support and resources needed to maintain this effort. And one key aspect of conservation in the Kootenay region is private land stewardship. So KCP supports stewardship organizations that conduct landowner outreach by contributing technical and financial capacity, as well as opportunities for better coordination, effectiveness, and synergies. And so these Conservation Ambassador training series are born out of our commitment to build stewardship capacity within a collaborative community of stewardship providers in the Kootenays. So many of you are already familiar with the Stewardship Solutions Toolkit, but I'll just quickly go over it for the new folks in the Zoom. So it's an online directory of stewardship services and resources that's available to landowners and managers in the Kootenays. And it's available for free on our website at kootenayconservation.ca/toolkit. And the services in the toolkit are organized into 14 conservation neighborhoods. So when you're on the webpage, you'll see this map and you simply click on your conservation neighborhood to see the stewardship solutions that are specific to your area. So then you'll get brought to a page that looks like this, which lists all of the services in a grid format. And you can click on any of these tiles to learn more about each program. So some that might be applicable to today include the Slocan River Streamkeepers that are listed there circled in blue, and the Kootenay Lake Partnership circled in yellow, just to name a couple. So we're running this Conservation Ambassador training program to help spread the word about the Stewardship Solutions Toolkit and to share the knowledge of private land stewardship options that are available in the region. So we began this year with a module on wildfire resilience, and then another about stewarding with bears and bats. So if you missed either of those webinars, don't worry, they were recorded and they'll be posted on the KCP website in the coming weeks. So today we're going to focus on stewarding for riparian and foreshore habitats, and we'll begin by listening to two presentations, followed by a Q&A session, and then we'll go into some small breakout groups to get to know each other better and deepen our learning, and then we'll reconvene and close the Zoom. So our first speaker today is DG Blair. DG is the Executive Director of the Stewardship Centre for BC, where she's been instrumental in developing the Green Shores program. This program helps landowners and planners to minimize the environmental impacts of their projects on shoreline and aquatic habitats. They provide a range of tools and resources, including technical assistance and financial benefits, to help preserve and restore physical processes that maintain healthy shorelines. DG also manages the Green Shores Local Government Working Group, which enhances the capacity of staff and elected officials who work with landowners and other stakeholders in shoreline planning and protection through the Green Shore programs. Welcome, DG. And our second presenter today is Gregoire Lamoureux. Gregoire co-founded the Slocan River Streamkeepers 20 years ago, with the goal of improving stewardship of aquatic habitats and riparian ecosystems, and educating the public about these important systems. Gregoire also now manages their riparian restoration projects. He's on the executive committee for the Slocan Wetland Assessment and Monitoring Project, also known as SWAMP, and he runs the Kootenay Permaculture Institute. So welcome, Gregoire. So I'm going to stop sharing now. And then when you're ready, DG, you can share your slides and let's see how it goes.
Okay, thank you. There we go. Just checking everybody can see my slides.
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, thanks so much, Cami and the whole team at KCP for inviting me this morning. I am DG Blair, and I'm hoping to share some information about green shores and how it might be a helpful tool in the Kootenay region. I have been with Green Shores for the past 14 years, and really we're looking at how to be better stewards of riparian and foreshore habitats through the application of Green Shores. For those who aren't familiar with the Stewardship Center, we're a provincial organization with a mission to strengthen ecological stewardship in BC by providing educational, technical, and capacity building programs and resources to organizations, governments, the private sector, as well as the general public. And we always work through collaborative partnerships. The Green Shores program is a keystone aspect of the Stewardship Center, and we're currently expanding across BC, as well as across Canada along coastal and lake shorelines. So I'd like to just sort of start with a bit of a key idea, and that local governments, conservation organizations, shoreline professionals, and local property owners can utilize the Green Shores Toolkit, and ultimately to achieve improved shoreline stewardship using the different aspects of what's in the toolbox. So the tools in the Green Shores toolbox include technical guides, Green Shores for Homes, and Green Shores for Shoreline Development. As Cami mentioned, we have a local government working group which helps facilitate community implementation for Green Shores. We offer Green Shores training, 3 levels of training that is delivered locally in community. We offer a certification program for projects that utilize the guidance in the Green Shores guides. And finally, we have Green Shores approved professionals and a community of practice. So before I get into the aspect of, various aspects of Green Shores and the program, I wanted to highlight that Green Shores is based on 4 really key principles. The first is that we want to preserve or restore shoreline physical processes. We also want to maintain or enhance habitat function and diversity. We want to prevent or reduce pollutants from entering the aquatic environment. So in that, we also consider what happens upland on the shore environment. And finally, anything we do along the shore, we want to avoid or reduce cumulative impact. So Green Shores takes a very holistic approach to what is happening on the shoreline. And Green Shores, all Green Shores verified projects must meet all of these guiding principles in order to be a Green Shores project. So I wanted to just touch on a little bit about that first principle, shoreline processes, because what we find is a lot of people actually are not familiar with how water and sediment is naturally supposed to move along the shore, sediment moving downstream from the upper watershed, going down rivers and streams, getting transported onto beaches and creating beaches. But once on the beach along the shore, sand and sediment is transported along the shore. And this transport, or this input as well as transport, is critical for habitat. And if you do not maintain that sediment input as well as transport, then you can have situations where beaches are starving and we can actually lose the critical habitat. So that's why that first principle is so important. As well, we need to look at the intersection between riparian zone and the shore. So the foreshore area. For example, study have shown that terrestrial riparian food sources can make up to 50% of the diet of juvenile salmon. Riparian zones are also critical habitat for species such as bats, and offer a critical wildlife corridor. So we need to look at not only what happens in the riparian zone and its impact on the aquatic environment, but also vice versa. And that is why that second principle is so critical. So what is green shores? Basically, green shores can be seen as a framework for applying a nature-based approach to shoreline management. So we use these 4 principles that are applied in this guidance document, and it can be applied on both lake as well as coastal settings. It's intended to help communities adapt to climate change by fostering healthy shoreline ecology, which ultimately benefits human well-being. And this aspect is supported by current research that nature-based approaches do help communities become more resilient to the threats of climate change. Green Shores, through its education and outreach, also promotes better understanding of the importance of healthy shorelines, because as we know, people protect what they know and love. Yeah. So just to give a few examples of green shores, I always think picture's worth 1,000 words. I always think of green shores as like LEED for the shoreline. It's a credit and rating system that incentivizes more best practices going into each and every project. You can see the before on the left-hand side, hard armor, no riparian or foreshore habitat, and the left, on the right, the after. Another example here is where the previous one, it was really all about habitat. This example is about shore protection. You can see there's quite a bit of erosion on in the left-hand side, and they used a nature-based hybrid approach on the right to add protection from erosion, but also increased riparian habitat. And then this example here is where we have 100% hard armor, no riparian habitat, and the after here, where they have actually recreated the beach that had been infilled, added woody debris habitat, and although you can't see the number of trees because this is still early days, added a lot of trees as well as shrub. So all the 3 projects that I've shown have restored foreshore habitat, restored riparian habitat, increased access for homeowners to the shore or beach from a recreational perspective, as well as increased erosion and flood protection, all using nature-based solutions. And the reason why Green Shores really is important is because there's a number of development issues, mostly because we hadn't really thought about the application of these type of principles previously. So we have shore hardening, we have encroachment into the foreshore area, we have infilling and removal of riparian vegetation are very classic examples of what we tend to do. And these are threats to our ecology. So how do we move homeowners in particular to move from this hard armor removal of riparian vegetation that we see on the top row to a more natural approach that we see on the bottom? So Green Shores is a credit and ratings guide. So basically you can think of the credits as best management practices that we want to encourage more BMPs going into each and every project. So Green Shores is applicable to residential properties, freshwater and lake, as well as marine shorelines. And it's intended to encourage incremental improvement. So you get credit for doing something good. So if you remove 50% of your riprap or hard armor, you get credit for that. And obviously it's based on these 4 Green Shores principles. So let's take a look at some of the differences between a traditional approach and to be honest, If folks have an erosion or flooding problem, often that they think the immediate way to go is to put in riprap, concrete walls, etc. And that basically will do things like we see on the left-hand side. It'll limit beach access. It'll change the change of the beach in terms of increasing scouring and erosion. It'll decrease habitat. It also encourages hard armor where you have the splash effect, as you can see on the image there. In contrast, a Green Shores approach will look at improving ecological health, using sand, gravel, vegetation to absorb that wave energy, reduce flooding and erosion while improving habitat, and obviously better access. And those people that we're training, people like yourselves who can take training, can actually help with design. And finally, nature-based approaches are less expensive to install. And we have some research that shows that they can be anywhere from 30 to 70% less expensive to install than a hard armoring approach. So in terms of the practice of shoreline stewardship using Green Shores, we can use that Green Shores checklist to guide any riparian and foreshore works. And I would argue that there is something for everyone in the Green Shores credit and ratings guides. You can focus on all of the categories, or you can just focus on one or two. But in order to be certified, you have to achieve a certain number of credits in each of the categories. So the first one is shoreline processes credits. The second is shoreline habitat. The third is water quality. And the fourth is shore stewardship. And the beauty of the framework is that it forces a person, or really encourages, I guess is a better word, to look at all 4 categories in order to achieve like a gold rating. And people want to go for gold. If they're enrolling, they go for gold. It's just human nature. So we support that through this checklist. And obviously there's more detail in each, lot more detail in each of the guides. We really encourage that local conservation and local government organizations to help apply Green Shores on a broader scale. Although individual homeowners can do it, if we look at a neighborhood or a littoral cell scale, we obviously have much more impact. And then finally, I'd like to mention to take Green Shores training, or sort of reiterate, we have an introduction to Green Shores, as well as the application of Green Shores, level 1 and level 2. And then once you get some experience in doing some Green Shores projects, we have a Green Shores level 3, which is for approved professionals. So hopefully this is giving you a wee taste of the fact that local governments, conservation organizations, professionals, and property owners can help achieve improved shoreline stewardship by utilizing the Green Shores toolbox. And you can access the Green Shores homepage on that website there. There's a lot there. I'm hoping that this will just sort of whet your interest to perhaps organize some Green Shores training in your community. And I did want to also mention that the Stewardship Center also has some other resources for riparian and foreshore stewardship, including Lands Near Water, which is focused on streams, riparians along streams and lakes, drainage maintenance and stewardship for agricultural properties. And finally, we have 20 case studies on the application of those 2 guides by different regions. And they're really interesting to take a look at why agricultural producers primarily are applying, and the whys and the hows, and the sort of lessons learned. So they're really, really interesting case studies. Want to just acknowledge that we have amazing support from our funders and partners, and particularly a shout out to all our technical advisory committees and project committees. And then finally, thanks a lot for listening to me talk about Green Shores, and feel free to get in touch. So I'll end there and move on to the next Speaker Gregoire.
Great. Thank you so much, DG. That was a fantastic presentation. And I know we didn't have a lot of time on those last few slides with like the web links and stuff, but I will be sending out an email to all the attendees. DG has kindly provided a list of resources that I can send out to you guys. So yeah, don't worry about scribbling down the too quickly. So Gregoire, when you're ready, if you want to share your screen. Fantastic.
Great. Thank you, Camille. Thanks to the KCP Kootenay Conservation Program for hosting the event. And a great presentation from DG as well. Thank you. So yeah, I've been involved with Slocan River Streamkeeper for many years. My presentation mostly focused on the river, on Slocan River, most photos coming from, but a lot of the principles apply to both rivers and lake, Riparian and Foreshore. So here in the background, this photo, you got a fairly healthy ecosystem, riparian ecosystem, a mix of evergreen deciduous forests, some grasses on the left. The river is at flooding time in June last year. So we'll move on to other photos. Here the background on the Streamkeepers. We've been active since 2003 or 2005. When the restoration project started. So we got 50 projects implemented and 3 with fish habitat, 2 wetland restoration project. We're working with over 50 landowners, restore approximately 5 kilometers of riverbank. And the latest things, we've been installing nesting box as well. So again, the background photo, relatively healthy, a mix of deciduous, evergreen, is a bit of beach, a bit of grass on the left. So let's look at more photos from different habitat here. What to look for, again, very different here, for more active river here, more flow, more rapids, low water, sort of late summer here. And very evergreen, very sort of mature riparian ecosystem, very little disturbance here. So things are moving along here. And then here, totally contrast. So one thing we like to look at is for erosion. River constantly move sediment, move material, erode the banks. As you see here on the left, the bank has no trees or shrubs growing. So we've been restoring slowly that bank, but because it's in the curve that has the most energy of the river, so it's degrading quickly. Where there are trees upstream, there's a bit of degradation again, but slightly less. So you have always this process of degradation, and then on the right side of the photo, aggradation. So the curve, the outward curve will erode, and then inward curve will have the deposit of sediment, gravel, sand, etc. Here, this is the Little Slocan River. Again, same process happening here. The degradation or erosion is upstream from this photo, and it's actually a very large one, a very large landslide that's been happening for the last 15 years. Here on the left, you have the aggradation at 2 levels. On the left, the gravel and the rocks, cobbles, and all of that are already building up some vegetation. Some of the pioneer species, the willow and the cottonwoods, are getting established. In the center, sometimes river will tend to form islands. So again, the gravel bar first, and then so the early process are happening here. Similar kind of a process here. So depending on the flow and then the slope and then of the river, you'll have different size of sediment depositing. So if you have very gentle flow, like a good part of the river where I live, it's very slow moving from Appoldale to Windlaw here. So there's a lot of sand depositing. And then when the river start moving faster, you got the smaller rocks, gravel, cobbles, and then larger boulders as you get a lot of flow happening. So here, more kind of stable ecosystem, sort of upper the watershed. Again, as you look at mostly deciduous, so there might have been, well, we know there has been some logging, forest harvesting in the past, but things are kind of more stable right now. So it's the river, there's a bit of flow here, but little erosion happening. The point is to leave all the trees or on the riparian, so we may not have able to go back to these large western red cedar that's in the last few remnants of this along the Slocan River here. But we have to leave all the trees, and if there's no trees, then we'll look at a process of restoration. So we've done again many restoration process. So here we're starting from a field, a pasture, and then planting the cottonwood, the early species, cottonwoods and willows and red osier dogwood and all mountain alders. So I mentioned leaving all the trees, living trees, also that dead trees. As the trees start to die back, as you see in these birch, they tend to be more short-lived these days, and they start dying back, but they provide a lot of habitat for wildlife. And as they slowly eventually die back, and they'll fall on the ground and provide more habitat for other wildlife and provide many functions. So here's a larger trees. The larger dead trees are so important, obviously, unless there's some risk to buildings or structures or nearby. They should be left alone. This is a excellent specimen for wildlife and habitats and birds and small mammals and all that. So the tree provide a lot of habitat as they are living, and they'll provide a lot of habitat as they're dying, even standing, or as they fall to the ground. Again, we don't want to leave them there on the beach. Obviously, if they're in the river, they may float away at some point, but if they're on the beach, we kind of leave them as much as we can where they are. And the same applies to rocks. People like to clear the rocks to create beaches, but ideally you want to leave all of that where they are, because they are all serving a important function where they are. So if we don't have all these large dead trees, I guess, decaying trees, standing trees, we sometimes provide habitat for nesting boxes for birds. So we've been very successful with our nesting box, especially with the tree swallows, that we love to have more of them around. And again, a lot of birds have been declining, including the swallows. We've had, I used to observe a lot more when I moved here over 30 years ago than we see these days, but the nesting box has built up their numbers again. So I'm happy about that. Moving on. So creating a riparian buffer zone. So this is a farmer that had left a zone. You see the bracken fern drying up there. So on the right side of the photo, that's his hay field that he cropped every year, and then left a riparian a buffer zone, an area that he didn't mow or touch. And then eventually we built a relationship with him and then created a riparian planting. So you got in the background some trees, and on the left there you got birch. So all the birch 20, 30 years ago when we first met, they were all standing up, but with the years the banks have been eroding, the birch have been dying back and falling into the river, which is a natural process. But when you're down to your last trees on the bank, you want to get there ideally before, so that you can reestablish a healthy riparian ecosystem. So we've been planting a lot of native species on this project. And here's same farm, but an area that had more living birch, so more and other species, hazelnut there. So it's much easier to restore when there's still lots of the component left alive and intact. Same place, a different photo, different angle. So things are, you can't, basically the river is behind there. You can't even see the river as things. So we two-step strategies. We protected what was there because the beaver were impacting pretty hard there with a fence, a beaver fence we call 4 feet high, and then we interplanted with some other species to kind of bring back the riparian, healthy riparian. So diversity is the other thing we look for. Again, in the background, you got a mix of cottonwood and a few evergreen cedars and such, and then in the foreground that was all clear a long time ago, so it's just grass or a mix of herbaceous. So we put in a lot of cottonwood 2 years ago, and they're doing very well. This site has been heavily impacted by another restoration project by beavers. So beaver has obviously a place in the ecosystem, so we're still trying to learn to cohabit with them. And because some of these areas have been cleared a long time ago for farming or for other purposes, homesteading, the canary grass has kind of moved in and basically taken over the banks. So to go back to move from canary grass back to a healthy tree shrub riparian system takes a bit of work, takes a bit of a different strategy, cutting the grass and planting taller trees. And then with the trees here, as you see, our tree protectors for the beaver. In between the tree protector, you're seeing some stems that are not protected. So we had both planted fully rooted trees as well as dormant cuttings. Most of the cuttings rooted very well because there's a lot of moisture on the site. This is floodplain as well, by the way, or most of it. But the beaver mowed down everything that we didn't protect. So tree protection sometimes is required. This is a different site, another restoration project with a lot of bank erosion. So kind of hard to see because it's right underneath where we planted all that. So trying to get some deep rooted trees, cottonwood here in the photo, or to protect the bank to hold back the prevent erosion, basically, or minimize erosion. Some of the challenges include the flood, that's a cycle of flood and drought. So we go from a season in June, usually around June 1st. This year was more like May 15th, where the river is very wide and a lot of floodplain basically underwater. So these areas are always more difficult to establish our tree because grass is very love those kind of area where it gets flooded and then the water recedes. So the recurring grass again very, very strong there. So two strategies. So we're planting taller trees again and cutting back and trying to plant denser area where the trees will eventually shade out the grass. Again, trees are protected here from beavers. So here's the famous reed canary grass. So you may think it prevent erosion. It will prevent sort of a surface erosion. That's fine for that. But what happened is that very shallow rooted. So the river either undermines underneath that, and then you have these big slumping happening, sloughing of the banks. So, again, above you see the trees. It takes a few years, obviously, to get enough roots into the system. But, we got to start now. So strategy with the grass, again, often when we can, when it's above the floodplain, we use mulch, wood chips and other material for natural material for mulch. And at the bottom, we've been basically cutting the grass. And as the canopy closes in with the trees getting taller, we've already observing the grass that are starting to die back. And and the trees and shrubs sort of doing better. Other challenges in our project, and that can also happen in a natural ecosystem, obviously. So the rodents, from the left would be more the voles that will eat some of the trees we plant. Again, our tree protectors are doing a good job with that. And on the right is beaver. And again, there are no species that the beaver will not cut down, eat, or remove. And there's no size of trees. So they'll take a very large mature tree as well as small little saplings. So obviously, we don't want to protect every trees on the river, along the river. We've sort of figured out we want to protect the small one when we plant them, and sometimes we will protect the large one. Because sometimes cottonwood trees will take 50 to 100 years to get the fair size, so we don't want to lose those trees too fast. So in between the middle-aged one, we want to let them go and share with the beaver. We often joke we plant food for the beaver, or we want to create a very healthy habitat for beaver, but without any beaver for a while. So, but we understand their role in the ecosystem, and we're very happy they're here. Again, same thing here, beaver fence. Again, here you got a bit of riparian left on the bank. So there was a big, I believe, a birch tree just upstream from that photo, and it fell down by the time we made the agreement and started to plant the trees. The birch already fell down to the ground. There was one large cottonwood in the back that's still there today. And this is a very difficult site, very sandy, very dry. So another big this is cattle. So we want to create exclusion zone, again, buffer zone to exclude cattle. They should not be in the riparian or in the river. I believe sometimes they can have access for drinking, but not the whole bank left to them. So they create a lot of erosion and disturbance on the bank. So there's a lot of tolerance in the region for cattle and other livestock, and I don't understand it. So here we have fencing, basically just a typical cattle fence. So this is a farmer that had cattle and other livestock, and then we created this buffer zone. So it's riparian. That was one of our early projects that was doing very well. We had a bit of impact from beaver, but it was kind of still the trees are, big enough that they will bounce back. They will grow back after being cut down. So erosion, one thing we look for on the riparians, their erosion is a small amount of erosion, like in this photo. So trees and shrub might do a good job here, eventually protecting it. We want to, slow down or protect from erosion. But when it gets major like this is again, a farm that many think the side channel here is just carving away the banks. You see the banks is mostly grass that's been pastured for many years. There's no trees or shrub or anything like that. So sometime when you get to that stage, it may require more than the planting may help, but it won't be enough. So you need to have a better strategy for dealing with such a large amount of erosion. We're not a big fan of riprap or rocks on the bank, but sometimes this is along a road, so a back road in Slocan Park. So the highway will install the rocks to protect their infrastructure, their roads, and all of that. And we understand that. Often the ripraps are also vegetated, so trees are planted either amongst the riprap or above the riprap or along the riprap. So that's a better strategy. Tires was used a lot in the past, and 30, 40, 50 years ago, but we're not big fans. So if they are protecting the bank, we don't remove them, but we often find a lot of tires doing anything. So we try to remove things that are don't belong in the river, I guess, let's put it that way. So our strategy is more of mimicking nature. So here's a natural process. Trees and logs fall down and anchor on the side, and then the pile of branch was created by both the river and the beaver. So there's a bit of a beaver lodge on the bank. So river beaver will dig a hole in the bank and then accumulate branches for their snack, for their winter snack, winter food. So and again, sea beaver work both ways. They'll remove trees and sometimes create erosion, but at the same time, by accumulating branch and trees there, they will also protect the bank, from erosion. So this is a natural process. Again, a couple, 2 or 3 large cedars, and I think there's a big birch underneath there that were just accumulated on the bank, and again, offering a lot of protection. You got the background, mature mix, mostly cottonwood forest with some, again, a dead tree, dead snag on the left there, and in the foreground toward the river, it's more reed canary grass. So we're working on this project, replanting the cottonwood trees all the way to the edge, or the native trees. So when the grass move in, it's very hard for the trees to get established. Cottonwoods do require a disturbance, which can be erosion, but can be us moving, cutting the grass and planting the trees. So but this is helping, but because that's one project that's kind of the river slowly undermining the grass there, the bank. Moving on, another project we did again with a combination. That one would be before, so the banks were eroding quite a bit. A lot of woody debris deposit on the bank because it's a flood zone here. You got the beach and the sandy beach in the back there, and then the same place this after our restoration project. So we use a combination of logs, rocks to anchor the logs, living trees. You got hawthorns and willows that were planted there, and other native species, cottonwood and such. So did very well here. This is reduced the erosion quite a bit. Another project that we done now on south of Winlaw. So again, the curve of the river wanted to kind of erode the bank there in the curve and jump, and then eventually create side channel. So we don't have enough time today, but the whole conversation will be about side channel. The side channels are quickly filling in and not being, we're not allowing the river to create new one, because that's a homestead, that's a farm, on this property here on the left. So what we did was a combination again of logs, large woody debris, anchored by large rocks, covered with grasses, and planted with living trees as well. So and this project has been doing very well as well. So a photo here a few years later. So more trees, more woody debris are accumulating because of the flow of the river and the curve and all that. The the erosion is very minimal now. The banks are already greening up, and there's a mature, not mature, but a young riparian ecosystem. So air photo from this one, from drone. So you see sort of a combination of larger willows, smaller trees, and a mix, and you see the logs that were boat put in place, and also the logs that are collecting from the river. If you look a little behind, that's also a wetland. So that's another point about protecting wetland, the same place here, different photo. Protecting existing wetland, and sometimes look at possibilities of wetland restoration when possible. Again, riparian is planted here, and then, this was a wetland restoration project a few years ago. Again, doing very well, really creating habitat for a diversity of wildlife. Another air photo, again, sort of, I'm not sure you see my cursor here. So again, the curve wanting that this is at the flood time a few years ago, 2-3 years ago. The river, the riparian here getting established from us. This was existing riparian along here. There's the farm, organic farm. So this is doing well, although the riparian is a bit narrow. We'd like to have it more, but this is the wetland here that we restore, and there's more wetland here. So a few key points that we've talked about this morning. So maintaining a diversity of species, leaving large trees, especially alive, but also dead trees are important for wildlife, as well as large woody debris when they fall on the ground. So leave as much as material as possible on the site. Creating the buffer zone to protect your riparian area from cattle and other livestock. And sometimes we have to protect ourselves from our activities, such as farming, crop production, or other activities. We had a client that had a lawn all the way, as you saw in previous photo from our previous presentation, all the way to the river, and wondered why the banks were eroding. But while there was a small area that was covered with trees and shrub, that was doing well. Planting native trees and shrub, protecting, and sometimes we need to protect them from livestock or wildlife such as beaver and other browsers sometimes. Shading out the invasive species has been a good strategy for us, reducing the impact of reed canary grass, planting a dense planting of native trees and shrub. For erosion control, maintaining deep-rooted trees, living trees and shrub, and mimicking nature by leaving large woody debris. Protecting existing wetland and explore potential for wetland restoration. I'm sorry, the lower line looks like it's cut off. It says adding nesting structures when needed. Again, if you don't have the large trees, large dead trees for cavity nesting birds, sometimes the short-term solution is putting nesting box and then planting the trees that eventually will serve the long-term role. Again, big thanks to all our funders and supporters for all the years. Again, sorry if the photo is cut off at the bottom for BC government. Resources, the KCP Stewardship Solution has many great resources on the website. As a good example here from a Farmland Advantage. So if you're a farmer, you might have access to some funding to support and restore the sites or just conserve. We have there's our address, our email, our website, Slocan River, streamkeepers.com, or you can reach me at slocanriver@gmail.com.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. That was a great presentation. I love all the visuals with the photos to really get an idea of how to do it all. So our next step will be a Q&A session. So we have a good 15 or so minutes here for the Q&A. And these questions can be either for Gregoire or DG. So yeah, just you can unmute yourself and ask the question, or if you'd rather, you can also just type it into the chat. Okay, I'll start just to loosen everything up, and hopefully people feel comfortable to ask after. So my first question is for DG. So you mentioned that there were opportunities for training, and I do know that the Lake Windermere ambassadors had a chance to do a Green Shores training session. How can other groups participate?
Yeah, the great question. So as a nonprofit, we apply for funding to offer the Green Shores Level 1 training in particular for free. And so basically we have to have some funding to come in to deliver the workshop in different communities. So there's sort of two mechanisms for making that happen. One is by joining the local government, the Green Shores local government working group. So if I don't think we have any local governments on the call today, but if there is a local government that was interested in joining, one of the benefits is delivery of a level 1 workshop in the community, the local government. So there is a fee that we match with funding from external sources to be able to deliver that in our local government communities. The other way is to work collaboratively with a local nonprofit or a conservation organization. So for example, in Lake Windermere, we worked with the Lake Windermere ambassadors. They applied for some funding to help bring us there to cover travel costs and delivery costs. So that was also offered free. So we're happy. It was free to participants. So we're happy to work with an organization that would like to organize that. We know sometimes it takes a while to, move from the idea stage to the implementation, and that's okay. So just get in touch if there's anybody that's interested, and perhaps we could work collaboratively to figure out how to make it happen. What we find is that the training really sparks all sorts of ideas, and we offer it to both homeowners as well as practitioners, often at the same workshop. And then you sort of get this lovely mix of people who have an interest in doing a project on their property with practitioners, conservation organizations who want to help in the design and implementation. And so we use that Green Shores framework to make a design a really good project. So the training is both sort of theory, some classroom, desktop exercises, as well as field exercises. So you get a sense of how to use the credit and rating system to sort of come up with a better project all around. So thanks for the question.
Fantastic. Yeah, that sounds like a great opportunity. Yeah, Wendy, go ahead.
Let me unmute here. Okay. Very good, DG, because in a lot of recent meetings I've been involved in, and in particular on Slocan Lake and the river that Gregoire has shown, we're trying to move forward with some foreshore initiatives, I guess is the best word, and working with the regional government, some First Nations participating, but we're just trying to get our feet or a feel for what's regulatory compliance, because it's tough to initiate a program if we don't have some stronger backing. And one of the challenges, and I'm just going to jump in here with this, and this is my question. One of the challenges is we're in a very rural setting, and so we are guided by OCPs, official community plans, which are usually fairly general when it comes to environmental or riparian protection, but critical, as we know. So my burning question is, how do we sort out with all the various groups? It's really difficult, because I'm often asked, the stewardship should be doing education on foreshore, and with limited capacity, I need a broader backing than that. Yeah. And one of the things that we have is very outdated OCPs in this area. So we really don't have much authority to move forward, but want to. So I'm giving you a difficult question, but it sounds like you've had some experience with different groups and how we can move forward with that.
Yeah. Great question, Wendy. And one of the things we cover in our introduction to Green Shores is all about foreshore and riparian governance, and all the different levels of government that actually, if you want to do a project, you need to be aware of the regulatory framework and how to move forward. So one of the things that I will say is that we've been working with the province to encourage a process for utilizing a Green Shores framework, nature-based approach for an expedited permit within the foreshore and both marine and lake settings. Right now, they're in the intention is to have it across the province. Right now, we're in a pilot stage on the west coast of Vancouver Island. However, we do have this checklist, which is applicable for both lake as well as marine coastal settings. So if you are wanting to do any work in the foreshore, you do need to, the province does own that part of the water. However, the water itself, they own the bottom, and then the water itself can be the local government, whatever that is. And that's why and then of course you have the federal government. So it's very complex. But what we're finding is that there's a lot of support. If you say, I want to do a Green Shores project, I'm going to meet all the design standard of Green Shores. It gives the regulatory folks a lot more confidence, particularly if we bring everybody together, the local actors in a workshop. We can go through that in the introduction. And so I guess that's one of the things I would say would be, start with that, bringing people together, talking about it. And then we do have these different resources that we can bring to the fore. I mean, I wish I could say that, yes, this new nature-based permit from the province is applicable across the province, but we're not there yet. It took 4 years to get to the pilot stage. It was so slow, but it's great. And they've reiterated, yes, our intention is to roll it out across the province through Front Counter BC. And then, yes, it would be really great if the federal government also would want to be using, through the DFO, using the same checklist. Again, we're not there yet, but we have anecdotally them looking at it going, yes, this is great, right? So it's, I never would have gotten into this business if I wasn't an eternal optimist. Sort of saying, okay, you just got to keep working at this stuff. So I don't know whether that's helpful, but it is complex. I feel your pain. You're not alone. But I think from my perspective, the good news is that we know from a government perspective, they're very supportive of this Green Shores framework. And then if you can, use that to your advantage at the local level, then, that would be my recommendation, is if we could work with you guys to, come in and do a workshop, and we can bring all these players together and come up with a plan that would be applicable locally for you.
That's very helpful. And I know we lived in quite an imperfect world, so I'm not looking for perfection, but really just knowing that we're getting the start going, and that there is, I'm extremely patient, but I know that we continually have to prepare for the bigger and hopefully more coordinated recognition of all the foreshore and that sort of thing. Yeah. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thanks. I do see a few questions for DG in the chat. So we'll go through those, and then I'll just try and make sure that there's time for questions for Gregoire as well before the end of the Q&A portion. So just quickly, we have a question. Is there somewhere we can register to see when a Green Shores training session is happening in our region?
Great question. I think the short answer is no, but I think probably the best mechanism, and I'm wondering whether the KCP might be able to sort of offer a coordinating role for that, and maybe we could work with you all to see about getting some funding to get some training delivered locally. I mean, I'm just throwing that back to you, but what do you think about that idea? And we can just have the dialogue.
Yeah, we'll have to think about that a little more, DG, but we would definitely work with the lake stewardship groups for something like that. And if any organization is offering that training, if they let us know, we can put it in our e-news and send it out and be that conduit of information. Absolutely. I know Lake Windermere did before, but a lot of our lake stewardship groups are really struggling right now with capacity issues. So it's definitely a question, something we could work on.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, I mean, you certainly can go and subscribe to our newsletter for sure. And we do get, I think you can tick the Green Shores box on that and get Green Shores related newsletters, which does describe the upcoming training. And then there's also our website does have something for upcoming training. The majority of our funding is for training, however, in the Lower Mainland and on Vancouver Island. So.
No, that's fair. Just two more quick questions about Green Shores. So the next one is, do you just have like an approximate amount of matching funds that would be necessary to provide a level 1 training?
So the level 1 training is $5,000 plus sort of travel expenses to come to the Kootenays for a day-long training. It's a set fee. So we don't have any current funding to come into the Kootenay region, but hopefully, you know, as I say, we could absolutely work on it.
Yeah, fantastic. And we have a question. To your knowledge, have any local governments in the Kootenays reached out to you about Green Shores?
Yeah, so we did when we were working with the Lake Windermere ambassadors. We had for a time the it's the East Kootenay Regional District. Do I have that right? And we did have a keen planner participate. And then he moved on to a different position with another organization, and it sort of died from there. So but I think who wrote that, getting the local government on board is really a key partner. So I would encourage you to do that. And I would be happy to chat with anybody about the benefits and maybe making that connection or making the rationale for you to help you out there.
Yeah, thank you so much, DG. So we've still got a couple minutes left in our Q&A portion before we move to the breakout room. So I just want to make sure that those of us with questions for Gregoire have a chance. Does anyone have a question? A little quiet. Okay, I'll start.
I have an answer or a comment or one more thing to add that wasn't mentioned in the presentation. Is about relationships. I think one of the most important part for me and for us, it's a relationship to all of all parts, from the land relationship to the land, connecting with the land, spending time walking the river, along the lake, connecting with the plants and animals there, because they're teaching us a lot about what's happening in the river and the water as well. Also, obviously, the main relationship with the landowners or land managers, stewards, so that we can build on sort of long-term kind of but often also these landowners change, move, sell, or so. And then when we're looking at a long-term, long-term relationship with First Nation is so important to get, share that knowledge and learn from them. As well as partners, when we also look at a restoration project, funders, government agencies, other stewardship groups. So who can we partner with? Local people, also good relationship with local resident, having support. So we're not sort of a bubble doing all the work, but people don't necessarily care or don't respect what we do. So it all takes time. It all takes, commitment and, long-term dedication to building these relationships and maintaining them as well. So just wanted to add that. Thanks.
Absolutely.
I have a question for Gregoire. I was wondering, you talked a lot about caging trees to protect them from rodents. I've done a lot of restoration work in the Gulf Islands, and we cage trees there as well. We don't have beavers, but we do have overabundant deer. Are deer stripping bark or antler rubbing, anything like that, a problem for your seedlings and saplings?
We have observed that, but it's been very minimal compared to the beaver is the main one for us. There's, not necessarily a large amount, but a beaver overnight can do a lot of work. Sometimes we've tried a few times to do a plant. We would go out and plant 40 trees or so on the banks. And then the next day or 2 days later, we'd come back and thinking we'll protect them later or after. And overnight, one project, all the trees were mowed to the ground. So, so the roots are well established. It's a challenge. The two strategy, as you mentioned, the tree protector and the caging, or the little enclosure we do. Although they're only 4 feet high, obviously the deer can jump that, but because they're small, sometimes they're only 2 or 3 meter wide or so, and then whatever 10, 20 meter long. Deer don't necessarily like to jump in there, and they feel trapped, so they tend to leave the trees alone. The challenge we had last winter was the snowpack. We get quite a bit of snow along this, in the Slocan and the West Kootenays. And in the winter, there'll be a time of the winter, January, February, when all the snow freeze hard. So now we had the beaver walking on top of the snow and just jumping over the fence, basically. So, and mowing up many cottonwood trees that we planted. So, but yeah, the two main for us is beaver and the voles. We were doing the enclosure with wires, and then saw that the voles were, eating the trees at the bottom. So voles is usually minimal, but it's frustrating when they, you start the tree, you see all the tree die back and you can't tell right away what's going on. And then when you look at the bottom of the base and you see they all girdle and shoot up the bark. So yeah, deer it depends some area. We have elk too that can do a lot of damage. And again, no amount of fencing or very difficult to slow down elk when they want to go through. We've had bear walking right through our fencing. If we use more, bear will go for the hawthorn here, the berries. And if we use fruit producing shrubs and our native berries producing shrubs, then we may get a visit or two of the bear. And then the same with the bear, the fencing doesn't slow them down very much. So, but yeah, thanks. But mostly the beavers seem to be our main concern. And once they're established, again, it's always back to having enough well-established trees and shrubs so that you can handle the pressure, and then with the deer, once the trees are a certain height, then they'll be fine. Although, like you say, rubbing and peeling the bark is a bit of a frustrating for sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome.
Great, thank you so much. So for our next portion, we're gonna have to move on to the breakout rooms. So we're going to split up into 2 breakout rooms, and we have about 10 minutes or so to discuss what we learned. So in each breakout room, we're going to do like a quick roundtable of introductions from each person, introducing themselves and their organization. And then we're going to center that group discussion around 3 questions. And I'll just say those questions quickly now, but Juliet and Kendall will pop those questions into the chat within each breakout room, so you can refer to that. So those questions are, given what you learned today, what could you incorporate into your work? Why is it important? And how will you do it? Oh, fantastic. Okay, it looks like everyone's back from the breakout room. So we just have 9 more minutes here. But so how we'll end this off is we're going to do a Mentimeter that Juliet's going to run, which will allow us to sort of synthesize what we learned today. And then we'll just congratulate all of the conservation ambassadors for 2023, and then we can wrap it up. So Juliet, take it away with the Menti.
Thank you. It's always so startling. I forgot about that mid-sentence pulled away. So you can do this. It's just a small summary of our conversation. You can do it on the computer that you're doing your Zoom on, or on a phone or tablet or a separate computer. If you go to www.menti.com and then you type in the code that I'll just read out in case you're there right now. It's 16485295. Did I get that right? 16485295. If you enter that into your menti.com, you should have a question there. You can take a little bit of time to think about that and answer, and then press submit. And then in a moment, Kendall will let our answer shine on the screen for us to see. So if you have any trouble, that's also in the chat, menti.com, and then the code there. While you're thinking, I just note, Melinda, that you'd like to connect with Rhiannon about elk, and we will share anyone who's given us permission, our contact information, so that will come out in an email so that you can all connect with each other. That's a goal of today. I think whenever you're ready, oh, I guess we have a little bit of time for you to think more, but then in a moment, Kendall will put the answers up when you see a few have been submitted.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for a few to pop up there and then I'll share my screen. They're starting to roll in. Here we go. All right.
Maybe slow down a little, Kendall, hadn't quite read all the top. Wonderful. Thank you for your thoughts. If you have any final ones to add, maybe just press submit soon, and then we can pass it along to Camille for a wrap up of today's session.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing all of your thoughts. That's really appreciated. So before we close off today, I just wanted to acknowledge that we have 4 people that attended all 3 of the Conservation Ambassador training sessions, and they are our 2023 Conservation Ambassadors. And those folks are Melinda Watson, Elodie Cunert, Megan McPhee, and Nevada Nicholas. Yeah. So congrats to all of you guys. Yeah, our partners that are involved in everything we do. I mean, yeah, you make our work worthwhile, and we really appreciate all of you, whether you attended 1 or all 3. Yeah, it's just so fantastic to see all these faces on the Zoom. So thank you. A big thanks to everyone that attended. And we will be sending out those conservation certificates for you guys if you want to put them on your wall. You'll be getting those later today. Yeah. And I'd also like to thank our presenters today for their time and expertise and sharing their knowledge with us, and for all of you for participating. And oh yeah, Juliet, why don't you plug the winter webinar series before I wrap up? Yeah.
Okay, we have, for all of you who want to continue your learning, we have an incredible 8-part webinar series coming up in the new year. We're hosting it in partnership with the Columbia Mountains Institute for Applied Ecology, and the focus is on wildlife corridors and ecological connectivity. And there are just fantastic speakers and an incredible amount of knowledge that will be shared through this webinar series. So you can sign up for all 8 or whichever ones that appeal to you, and that registration is now open. So feel free to sign up yourselves, and also please share it with your organizations and colleagues so that they know about this opportunity as well.
Thank you. All right. Well, I guess it's time to wrap up. So I'd like to say thank you so much. Merci. Husukir Kokni, Kuksjam, Limlamt. Thank you. And hopefully we'll see you at the next KCP event.